I was actually surprised how many of you wrote to me about this story in the few hours before we started producing today's show. And I want to talk about it because what's at issue is something actually kind of subtle. The headlines are Trump accuses the January 6th committee of seeking evidence of criminal activity. And a lot of you wrote to me and said that how is that an accusation? That's obviously the point. That's what the January 6th panel is supposed to be doing. But what's at issue here is that it is not actually the job of Congress to seek information about crimes. If they find information about crimes in doing their investigation, they should and can turn it over to the Department of Justice. But Trump's allegation is that that is actually the prime motive for what they are doing. So there's an Axios article that sort of explains this. Former President Trump's legal team accused the House committee investigating the Trump riots of seeking to uncover evidence that would support a criminal referral against him. Why it matters. The brief asked the Supreme Court to consider Committee Chair Benny Thompson's interview with the Washington Post as part of its effort to block the release of records to the committee. Last week, Trump's lawyers asked them to block the release of documents and records from his administration, arguing that their release would undermine certain presidential privileges. In an interview published the same day, Thompson said the Select Committee was examining Trump's actions on January 6 as it considers to recommend that the Justice Department open a criminal investigation into Trump. The Select Committee, so Trump is arguing the Select Committee is acting as an inquisitorial tribunal seeking evidence of criminal activity, and that doing so is, quote, outside of any of Congress's legislative powers. The Washington Post has confirmed what was already apparent. The committee is indeed seeking any excuse to refer a political rival for criminal charges, and they are using this investigation to do so. We're expecting a response from the committee today. So again, if your reaction is, of course, that's what they're doing, that's the point, it's actually not. The point of Congress, the job of Congress is not to seek as a primary objective information about crimes. What we would imagine, and I spoke to one lawyer this morning about it, what we would expect the committee to say is, we are investigating what happened, who caused it, how could it have been prevented, how can we make sure that it doesn't happen again? If in so investigating those questions, we come across evidence of criminality by Donald Trump or anybody else, in our opinion, because remember, they are not law enforcement, if in their opinion there is evidence of criminality or at least potential evidence to suggest an investigation, they would go to the Department of Justice and say, you might want to take a look at this, and the DOJ would then make a decision as to whether to open a formal investigation or not. So there is some subtlety there, and obviously there is room for interpretation and sort of squishiness there. Meanwhile, the claim from Trump is their only purpose, their only goal is to find crimes I may have committed or that they believe that I committed. And that is not actually the duty of a congressional committee. And that is accurate. That would actually be true. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be very hard to make the case. You sort of have to go to intent. And if you want to prevent access or try to shut down the committee or whatever else the case may be, you really have to get into the intent in someone's mind, sort of like with perjury. Did you unknowingly lie or did you deliberately lie? And it's going to be very difficult, from what I'm reading, to successfully argue that the sole purpose or the primary purpose or the true purpose of the committee is to find evidence of Trump's criminality. And I think if you look at the genesis of the committee in and of itself, it's pretty clear that while it may be a bonus, it may be a tertiary or subsequent priority to know whether Donald Trump committed crimes, you're not going to be able to prove that that's really the point of the investigation. It's also relevant to say that in an abstract sense, it is not the legislature's function to investigate crimes, but the legislature has a clear function in creating law. And to create law, you need to understand what took place and how what took place relates to the existing law. That's completely legitimate. You need to determine, does current law cover what took place or not? This was an issue with the Remember this whole child porn case in New York State? The details I don't remember, but there was some technicality in how the law used to be written where viewing child porn and possessing it were two different things based on browser cache and some technical elements. And after someone was acquitted or charges were dropped on that technicality, I think it was the New York legislature said, we've got to rewrite how we define possession of child porn. We're talking about something similar here. And the House committee can very legitimately, from what I'm reading, say we have to understand what took place in relation to the law because we are charged with writing law. And if in so doing, we come across the belief that laws were broken by Trump or anyone else, we refer it to the Department of Justice. I think they are ultimately going to have that argument prevail. And again, strictly speaking, if you want to defend yourself on process rather than on substance, which is what Donald Trump is doing, that is completely legitimate in our legal system. It is completely legitimate to get yourself acquitted because the people investigating you did not use the right processes. It's completely legitimate. Colloquially speaking, Donald Trump's continued behavior is not the behavior of an innocent man. One of our sponsors is Four Sigmatic, the company best known for their delicious mushroom coffee. Four Sigmatic's mushroom coffee is organic, fair trade, single origin Arabica coffee with both lion's mane and chaga mushrooms. Chaga mushrooms have actually been shown to have potential in supporting the immune system in peer-reviewed studies. I've been drinking Four Sigmatic coffee a lot lately. It actually doesn't taste anything like mushrooms. It just tastes like any delicious coffee, but it's really easy on my stomach, doesn't give me any jittery feeling or a midday crash, and they have over 20,000 five-star reviews. And best of all, if you don't love it, you'll get 100% of your money back because they stand behind their product. You've got nothing to lose by giving it a try. Four Sigmatic is giving my audience up to 40% off and free shipping when you go to foursigmatic.com/Pacman. The link is right underneath this video.